And I want to focus on these last two verses. Now, the very last line is insanely used by skeptics who want to debunk the Bible. They want to prove that it is not infallible, that Jesus is not divine because he made this prophecy about them not dying before they see his coming in his glory. And they know 2,000 years have passed and it hasn't happened yet. So they're saying that Jesus made a false prediction. They're trying to debunk it. The way they do that is they lock verse 28, which says, "Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." And they lock it in with verse 27, which is, "For the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay each person according to what he has done," which is certainly reasonable. Verse 27 is referring to like that last day, Judgment Day. So they're saying, talking about the same thing. And then what they further do is they lock it into an English translation, which uses the word coming. Well, in English, the word coming always denotes movement, like an arrival. I'm going to put out there for you that maybe a synonym, kind of means the same thing, might fit a little better, and it'll help make sense of this whole thing, how it did come true. Now, I'm not going to pretend I'm a Greek scholar, and I absolutely guarantee that I butcher the pronunciations of these Greek words when I use them. If there's people watching that actually know Greek, they're probably laughing or cringing when they hear how I say things. But then again, there's people who speak proper English that laugh and cringe at how I pronounce certain English words with my Philadelphia accent, so it's not really a big deal. What I do know is how language basically works. And the way language basically works, if you want to understand the meaning of a word, you just put it back in the context of what you use in several different places, and you see how it's used in different places, and you understand exactly what that word means. So, the word they use here for coming is ergomenon. And Matthew uses it a whole lot, so it makes it pretty easy to figure out what he means by that word. And I'll grant, coming, it fits nicely in all the spots. But so does appearing. In fact, I would argue that if we used appearing, which is pretty much a synonym, it fits a lot better. Especially in the circumstances like this where we're talking about supernatural, glorious events. So we'll start with a story we all know. We're getting ready for this at Christmas. We all know the story about the wise man who followed the star, and the star stood over where Jesus was. Matthew 2:9. There's a variation of this word. It says, "And behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it, ergomenon, until it came to rest over the place where the child was." So I would argue a reasonable translation would definitely be, "And behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it appeared over the place where the child was." Now some of the translations use the word arrived instead of coming. Not convinced? It's okay. We're going to go to another one. We're only going to do two. This is interesting because it's actually God will use the same verbiage he uses in the Transfiguration. In Matthew 3:16 it reads, "And when Jesus was baptized, immediately he went up from the water, and behold, the heavens were opened to him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove, and ergomenon, coming to rest on him. And behold, a voice from heaven said, 'This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased.'" Again, the word coming fits fine there. But appearing, I would say, fits even better. It makes more sense in this passage. He saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and appearing to rest on him. Now this is a pretty unusual event. So other translators, not really knowing what to use there, they say the Spirit of God was alighting upon him. That's how a lot of translators do it. So I'm not going to keep going through all these different verses. If you want to, you can go to Bible Hub, and it'll give you every instance where this word is used, and you can do it yourself. But I'm going to stick with this one because, like I said, you have the identical language from God. It's a very similar incident to the Transfiguration. So let's jump onto that. It says, "After 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, his brother, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with them. And Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He was still speaking when, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. When the disciples heard this, they fell on their faces and were terrified. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, Rise, have no fear. And when they lifted up their eyes, they saw no one but Jesus only. So it seems pretty obvious to me. This is precisely what Jesus was talking about when he says, Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming or appearing in his kingdom. And then only 2 verses, where it talks 1 week later, boom. He appears to them in all his glory. Now if you're not totally convinced, let's look how the other evangelists relate the same event. Now, Matthew is easy for laymen to follow, but since scholars seem to have such a hard time understanding the Bible, Mark makes it a lot easier for them because he keeps it all in 1 chapter. I'm kind of being facetious because the original manuscripts obviously didn't have chapters and verses. That's something we added later so you can easily reference them. I'm being tongue-in-cheek because my point is how stupid it is for an alleged biblical scholar not to be able to relate something that's said to something that's explained 2 verses later just because it's grouped in 2 different chapters. It's goofy. So Matthew 16:28. The language Matthew uses is, Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. And then 2 verses later we have the Transfiguration. Mark 9, he writes, And he said to them, Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God after it has come with power. And after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up to a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. And his clothes became radiant, intensely white, as no one on earth could bleach them. So it's obviously the same thing. In Luke 9, verse 27, he uses the same language as Mark. But I tell you truly, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God.